This video covers the IGCSE Biology Objective 1.3.5 on the 2025 CAIE syllabus to state the main features used to place flowering plants into different groups in the plant kingdom. So let's just take a look at the overview of plant classification, just so we kind of get an understanding. There are really two main groups of plants based on how plants reproduce. And so we've got reproduction by spores, and in that category we've got mosses and ferns, which are two different types of plants taxonomically. You don't have to worry about knowing the Latin words. And then we've got organisms in the plant kingdom that reproduce with seeds. And so within that category, we've got plants that reproduce with cones, seeds in cones, and then we've got reproduction with flowers. And so that is where we want to focus the plant classification for this syllabus, on reproduction with flowering plants. So flowering plants are called angiosperms, and when we're looking at different types of plants, there are two categories, monocots and dicots, and we'll get into more detail about that. But angiosperms are plants with roots, stems, and leaves. They reproduce mostly sexually by means of using the flowers with pollen and other features that we will talk about, and that turn into fruit. The fruit will produce seeds, and the seeds then germinate to produce a new plant. The seeds are produced in the ovary of the flower, which then become the fruit. And you can see that there are several different ways to determine if a flowering plant, that is an angiosperm, is what we call a monocot or a dicot. And really, the word monocot means one seed, and the word dicot means two seeds. And so we're looking at the actual seed, and is it in one part or two parts, and that will then help us to determine what type of plant it is. However, sometimes we don't always have the seeds. So there are other physical features that we can look at that will help us to determine what type of flowering plant we have in front of us. So you can look at the type of leaf, you can look at the stem if you're able to cut a cross section of it, and you can also look at the flower itself to determine how many petals are on the flower, and that then will help us to figure out what type of flowering plant we are looking at. So one of the things is whether it has the single seed or the double seed. Another thing that we can look at is the veins in the leaves, whether it has what we call parallel veins, the veins run parallel to each other, or if the veins of the leaf are net-like, as in think of a spider web. And then we can also look at the root system, whether it has what we call fibrous root. That means the roots kind of spread out, or if they have what's called a taproot that goes down very deep, straight down without too much extension. So if a plant does not have a flower and we can't look at the number of petals, these are some other ways that we can tell the difference between what we call a monocot or a dicot. So one major example of a monocot is maize. It has a single seed pod. There are hundreds of them on the on the maize cob, but each one of those is a single cotyledon or seed. If we look at something like a bean or a nut, typically there are two halves to that seed, and so that is where the dicot or two seed name came from.